moving in to our next group of 8, Dobbs, you want to list off 16 to 9?
Yes, sir. All right, at 16, I have the Atlanta Falcons. At 15, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. 14, I have the Los Angeles Rams. At 13, I have the Green Bay Packers. Number 12, I have the Buffalo Bills. At number 11, I have the Cleveland Browns. 10, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. And then to finish off this group, at number 9, I have the New York Jets.
16, I have the Steelers. 15, I have the Cowboys. 14, I have the Colts. We already talked about them. 13, I have the Packers. 12, I have the Falcons. 11, I have the Browns. 10, I have the Bills. And 9, I have the Jets as well. So let's talk about the Falcons first. Why do you have them at 16?
So I think for the Falcons, it's just like, again, look, they're one of these teams. Let me be so clear. No, this is not. Well, I can already hear the comments. This is not, no NFC South bias, anything along those lines. No, absolutely not. I think what it really is for me is it's like, look, Kirk. Yes, if Kirk can come in and have another good season, there's no doubt that this is going to be a much improved team and all. But again, when QBs are coming off of a big injury like that, there's always question marks that have to be in place. If Kirk comes back not as healthy, not playing to that same standard we saw him playing in Minnesota, well, all of a sudden the improvement that we thought we might see from this team could definitely be a lot lower than we expected. Again, the Falcons have a lot of talent all over the field. With the addition of Jesse Bates last year, David Onyemata's been playing great ball for them. AJ Terrell's still playing good ball. On the offensive side, you have put together a really impressive O line. Let me be clear, a really good O line. I think again though, the receiving core is nothing special minus Drake London. And you got it, I still am very high on Kyle Pitts, but we want to see Kyle Pitts get back to that rookie year status, kind of get back being comfortable with that confidence. I want to see Bijan Robinson make a big jump this year. I really think he could. Like I said, I think Bijan Robinson has potential to be the offensive player of the year this year if he can hit his ceiling truly with the way that this O line has been built. But again, it just goes back to Kirk. When you're coming off of such a big injury, I just don't know what to expect. And as I said, it's big on I'm big on QB tax. I felt like knowing that Kirk could come back shakier, injured, you might have to rely on Penix at some points this season. I just didn't know. It's kind of like I just felt more comfortable leaving them middle of the pack than moving them higher, if that makes sense.
No, I feel you. And I mean, I only have them at 12. I don't, to me, they're not a top 10 team. And because I just worry so much about that defensive line. Like, that is really like what the make or break is for me. I do think they're loaded on offense. Do I think they probably could have used like a high priced or a mid high priced wide receiver too? Like, I like Mooney. I really do like Mooney, and I think he's very good. But I do think as number 3, he could truly excel. I like their running back room. Obviously, we talked about the O line. There's just, in my opinion, so many variables that go along with this team while they're also such a talented roster that, like you said, it's hard to put them in that first tier of teams. So I don't really know if there's much to speak about here other than the fact of like they're a really good team. They need to prove that they can be a top team in the NFL. They have the roster for it, and we just need to see it play out.
No, that's literally the bottom line is again, they could totally outperform where I have them, even where you have them, but it also could be a little bit worse. It's kind of like we were just saying about the Bears.
Yeah, 100%. Number 15, you had the Steelers. I had them at 16. Yeah, I mean, I think they had probably one of the best draft classes, if not the best draft class outside the Eagles this year. I think they have completely revamped their offensive line, and I think that was the biggest thing. Now, where I struggle with them, and I know you'll probably feel the same way, is their receiving core. Because, you have an older Russ, you have a Justin Fields as a backup. So regardless of whoever you play, your wide receiver 1 is George Pickens, who I don't know if he can be like a dedicated one. I think he's more of like a A1, or 1A, 1B type of guy where he can play with another guy. But if he's going to demand attention from the top corners every single week, and you don't really have to worry about Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, Calvin Austin, I think that's just a pretty bad situation for any quarterback to go into. And if it was any quarterback outside of Russ or Bryce or oh my god, I'm getting tongue twisted. Russ or Justin Fields, I think like imagine if this was Bryce Young's receiving core, what would we be saying?
No, exactly. Like, I think, again, when you look at the Steelers' defense, just for starters, it's like, yeah, the Steelers have to be ranked somewhat high. I mean, this defense is still an elite unit. They still have so many positions that have groups that are really filled out and really have an identity to them. Even the O-line now. What I want to say is, I just love what the Steelers are doing in terms of like, not only did they draft the three offensive linemen early, and it's like, oh yeah, no, that's the future. No, they are literally already the starters on the depth chart. They're not like pussyfooting around it like a lot of these other teams. Like he's maybe no. They're like these are the starters. We are revamping the way we play. We are going power. We are going to have powerful guys all over this line. And if you remember, I've been saying the whole pre-draft process and draft process, like Mason McCormick is one of those guys where, yeah, coming from the FCS, instead of the FBS, it's like I think he's one of those guys that could totally make the transition and be a productive starter even from day one. He fell to the perfect situation in Pittsburgh. Yeah, three rookies starting is not necessarily the ideal situation, but on the other side of it, you have three guys that are going to be growing, learning together, and starting to form a bond together where if they end up all producing and being guys for you, those are all guys in a rookie contract. You have to love that if you're the Steelers. I think they'd be higher for me if it wasn't for the fact that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are the QB situation, right? That still is, it's where it's like, it feels like that's still a mystery that we have to have figured out down the road. But aside from that, and like you said, the receiving core definitely leaves a lot to be desired. But I think that they're going to be much more run heavy and they're going to definitely predicate the entire offense off the run. As the thing is, I still see them being a productive team. With Tomlin there, they always find a way to sneak in the playoffs. The bottom line is just that I couldn't really sneak the Steelers any lower than this. I felt like this was just a good spot, knowing their pedigree, knowing what to expect from them.
Yeah, unfortunately, the illusion of 9-8 will kill them because regardless who you start, Russell or Justin, you're probably going to be a 9-win team. But yeah, no, like the defense really isn't an issue. It's going to be how much they can, if teams are able to stop the run, how much is their pass game going to make? And it's funny that it's Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator who struggled because of his quarterbacks in Atlanta. Now, I do think this is an upgrade. Don't get me wrong. I think Russ is a major upgrade from Desmond Ridder, but it's still a situation of, oh man, can we get the pass game going? So, that being said, let's move in to number 14. You had the Los Angeles Rams. I had them at 8, so I had them in the first tier.
Okay, so my thing is, look, again, the Rams, just like we said about kind of like without spoiling where we have them, the Packers. Look, the Rams are the type of team where they could make an NFC championship type run, and I'm not sitting here saying that they couldn't. Like, let me be clear. The Rams have a lot of talent. They have the pedigree. They could totally outperform what I have them ranked. My biggest thing was just, look, though. We know staff is getting older and things can happen at any time. Number one, most importantly. So I have to consider that as far as that just goes with the strength of the roster. If anything happens to staff, all of a sudden, right, it's going to be a big, big difference of where things are at right now. Even though Jimmy G's the backup and Jimmy G can come in and produce, that's all of a sudden something you have to consider right off the bat. Right. Again, big fan of this O-line they've put together. I do believe I'm going to be a big fan of the D-line. But again, this is why I was careful, is I don't want to put them too high because as high as I am before I've seen them play in the NFL on Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, if they end up not producing to the standard I think that they could produce to, especially this rookie year, that could be a big hindrance on the production this defense has, and they could definitely slide a little bit. So that was just my thing more than anything. As high as I am on them, I still am going to consider that I haven't seen them play an actual NFL snap yet. And it's like, look, losing Aaron Donald is going to be a bigger, I think, it's a bigger loss to this defense than, even though people know it's going to be a big loss, I think we could see this defense struggle definitely a lot more than they have over the last few years, no matter who you replace them with this first year. So that was just my thought process, all things considered, where it's like, yeah, if staff can stay healthy, this is a team that could totally finish top 10. But if anything happens and he misses a couple weeks and this D-line isn't what we expect the young guys to be, there's a little bit of volatility in place more than anything else. You know what I mean?
I'm just so high on this team. I think I understand what you're saying about the defensive line. I just am seeing like the height of it. Like I can understand if it doesn't pan out and losing Aaron Donald, he's irreplaceable. Now imagine this line with Aaron Donald. That would be kind of nuts.
Yeah,
with that being
terrifying.
said, year 2 of Puka. I know Kupp is getting older. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year. But I'm pretty high on the Rams O-line as well to keep Stafford upright. They got, Cam Curl. They got Tre'Davious White. Like, they have the secondary now. And I think if they can just take another step forward, I can see them going toe to toe with anybody in the NFC. Like the Rams are someone where it's like it's Sean McVay, it's Matt Stafford. I'm not going to doubt them. They have an upgraded roster. What they did last year with a year where a lot of people thought, nah, they're not going to be that great. They could build on that and have an even better year. So I don't know what there is to say outside of the fact of you have a quarterback who's won a Super Bowl who is a very good quarterback. You have one of the best offensive play callers, and you have an upgraded roster building off what you already did last year where you overperformed.
No, that's a great way to think of it. Again, I was just more than anything applying the contingencies of Stafford's health. But if you don't
100%.
include that, it's like they
The sky's
have
the
a top.
limit.
Yeah, exactly. The sky's the limit. Like
13, we both have the Packers. So, like we said, like the Packers in the intro could be a team that goes to the NFC Championship. Like those are really the type of players that the Packers have in terms of youth and potential. Now, I think the issue is you have a very, very young wide receiver core, okay? And now you have a year of tape on Jordan Love. Do I think Jordan Love is the type of guy who will excel past what defensive coordinators can throw at him? Yes, I do. I do also think that it is a situation of, okay, we need to see how much it's going to affect him now that they have a year of tape on him. I do think Matt LaFleur is a very good play caller. They have Josh Jacobs. I do think they addressed the offensive line somewhat. And at the end of the day, I think they had a good draft. They definitely addressed the secondary quite a bit. I do think they need a little bit more help at corner. But I think the Packers are, I think it's the Lions division, honestly. But the Packers are definitely a playoff team. I don't see a way that they really don't. I don't see a way they don't make the playoffs this year.
no, with you 1,000%. And again, it's like the reality is Jordan Love elevates his team so much. And yes, there are still certain deficiencies. Like, right, I think you still want to see that interior get shored up more over the course of the next couple years. We want to see that these young receivers keep making those jumps. But if they keep making those jumps that we expect them to make, again, that's the whole point is truly the sky's the limit because this is a young team where everybody has been making jumps year to year, which is exactly what you want to see. Packers fans would agree, though. Biggest room of concern or area of concern at the moment. The cornerback room, I think definitely is still going to be something that has to be addressed heavily throughout the next few years. But again, they make it work schematically as much as they can. They figure it out, and it's kind of just been the Packers' MO. I think, you got to love also adding Edgerrin Cooper
Oh my God. That's
alongside
such
Quay
a good,
Walker is,
yeah.
I think, going to be a playmaker from day one. Again,
Even
also with
Javon Bullard
Xavier,
next to McKinney.
yeah, I was going to say, with Xavier McKinney and then Javon Bullard, if Javon Bullard can be the player I think he could be, especially in this rookie year, all of a sudden, Packers defense is really, really coming together. It really just comes down more to just, there's still a few spots in this interior that are going to need to be filled out over the next couple of years, but it's definitely not the end all be all. Packers clearly showed last year, even without Jordan Morgan, that they can compete. Adding Jordan Morgan to the line, I love Jordan Morgan. I mean, I think, again, Packers could totally outperform where I have them at. They could be a little bit behind it, but I think regardless, I'm with you that at the bottom of the totem pole, even if they finish at their lowest, I think they're still a wild card team in the playoffs.
Unfortunately, they are a forever competent team for me. Moving in to number 12, you had the Buffalo Bills. I had them at 10. I just think Josh Allen automatically makes the team a top 10 team. I think they did lose quite a bit, and I'm really interested to see how their offense works. I think James Cook is probably going to be a lot more of a focal point, and the run game is going to be a lot more of a focal point. But losing Stephon Diggs and then making Keon Coleman your ex right away, I just don't know if he's ready to be that. And I think, they have Dalton Kincaid, they have Curtis Samuel. This team is just very confusing to me on how the offense is going to look. But I do still think just because of the fact of Josh Allen is Josh Allen, that you really can't put them outside the top 10 or 12.
No, that's exactly where I stand too. Like, and again, there's definitely a lot of questions about the O line, but as we've seen with Josh, again, it's just like you're saying with Josh, and if you use PFF as a reference, he's coming off as the highest graded year of his career or highest career of whatever of his.
Yeah.
I think I said it right the first time.
Highest grade of his
Highest
career.
graded year of his career. Also, the highest graded quarterback in the league last year. It's not like I'm saying Dr. Seuss rhymes. I'm getting tongue tied like you were earlier. But the thing, bottom line is, look, with Josh Allen, I can't rank you much lower than 12, 13, 14. You're going to be a playoff team. They're going to figure it out. I think no matter what the situation is with Keon Coleman, maybe they'll end up moving him around, big slotting him. I think that he will figure out a role with Josh Allen. And I'm definitely still very much on the side that this defense is going to keep, they're going to figure it out. Like, yeah, you lost some key guys last year, but right, they always figured out with the linebackers, and there's still a lot of good, there's still some pieces on this D line. Like Daquan Jones, come back, be healthy this year. You still have Daquan Jones, Greg Rousseau turning into one of the best, if not, I don't want to say the best, but I'll say a top 15, top 20 edge in the league, a guy who can do it all, stop the run, be the pass rusher I expected to be coming out of Miami a few years ago. Von Miller, if we can see a Von Miller resurgence, all of a sudden this D line is really coming to life, as we know. Ed Oliver, we know about Ed Oliver. Not coming off the best year last year necessarily, but still a guy with super high upside that can turn on any moment. You have a great D-back room in terms of corners. Like you have fantastic cornerback room. The Bills still have pieces. They have Josh Allen. The Bills will still be competing, I think is the best way to look at it.
Yeah, Chase Claypool, man, he's going to be competing for wide receiver 6. I don't even know if he's going to make the roster, honestly, but yeah, I don't know. The Bills are just one of those teams that you can't cut out. It's going to be like kind of like, I don't want to compare them to like Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes has 3 rings, but it's just one of those teams where it's like, okay, well, they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So, and we know how much, success hinges on quarterback play. So at number 11, we both have the Browns. This is a team that is very talented, and if Deshaun Watson comes in and plays even top 15 football, to me, they're a top 8 team in the league.
No, that's 1,000% agreed upon. I think we would agree right off the bat, like the biggest thing, and that's what you think the contingency of why we have them lower than probably we would have had them before, and even like last year, is just it's a point now where we don't know what to expect from Deshaun. Like Deshaun's got to step in there and show us that he can get back to that old form. Because truthfully, especially from the bipartisan perspective, it's starting to get a little bit more shaky where it was like, at first I was riding heavy where I was like, look, man, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about anything off the field. I'm not, just going to say as far as Deshaun was on the field, I thought he could get back to being that same guy. Well, all of a sudden, after last year with the injuries and everything, it's like, is he going to be able to get back to being that same guy? A lot of questions around that situation now. But outside of him, you got to love the O-line. You got to love the D-line. You love the D-back room. You love the linebacking core. There's a lot of good things about the Browns, right? Like the Browns are a very stacked out team. The bottom line just comes down to Deshaun. It comes back to also hopefully Nick Chubb's able to come back, be healthy again, and actually bounce back. Prayers for him. He's been through a lot of serious injuries. So it's an uphill battle for Nick Chubb. My biggest thing too, though, is like, to pair with Deshaun, I'm really not that high on this receiving core. Jerry Jeudy's kind of a jaded where people view very different about him. I'm one of the guys on the side of like, I'm not really on the Jeudy train. I think that was a massive overpay. I think it was kind of a waste of resources. And yeah, I like Amari. He's definitely one of the better receivers in the league, but just by his lonely, how much is Amari and Deshaun going to do? I think there's still, and again, I love Njoku also. Njoku's coming off a great season, but it just goes back to Deshaun too. Like, how much do they elevate Deshaun? How much does Deshaun elevate them? That's the biggest area of concern with this team.
Well, they are definitely never giving out a fully guaranteed contract ever again. And I think after this year, if the Browns do not kind of make that push, it's so frustrating because the Browns are definitely one of the best rosters in the NFL. And if they can't make a push this year, I do think the pressure, like this is one of the, I think everyone knows that the Browns have to make like a Super Bowl run, but it feels like kind of under the radar right now. Whereas if they don't get to the chip this year, the NFC Championship,
or you mean
AFC Championship, I feel like all of a sudden there's going to be like, okay, the Browns have to do something now or else it's the whole experiment is fucked. So with that being said, I really hope Nick Chubb can come back. I do think the Jeudy thing, I agree with you, was an overpay. I think their defense is so stacked that it's like it'll compensate a lot for that. But the offense needs to be a decent amount high-powered. Like they need to be one of the, if they can be top half in the league, the Browns will be one of the better teams in the league. But it's all going to hinge on if Deshaun Watson can be that player that he was in Houston.
That's literally like the only, at this point, it's really all it comes down to. And Browns fans know it. I don't think there'll be much argument from Browns fans on this one.
At number 10, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, another AFC North team. I had them at 7. So, obviously, this hinges a lot on if Joe Burrow is going to be coming back healthy. I do think Jermaine Burton is honestly going to step in and be an instant impact for them behind T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And I think retaining Higgins instead of trading him and then getting Burton is a huge plus because he's able to learn from two really, really good receivers. I do like the tight end. They took an Eric All, and I think they did improve their defense a little bit. So with the Bengals, to me, whenever you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and then you still have who is the head coach? Why am I blanking? Not
Zach Taylor.
Zach Taylor. As much as people are, in the middle on him, I think the Bengals are a really talented team, and Joe Burrow to me just kind of has that X factor, similar to a couple other of the top quarterbacks in the league. So you can't really count him out, and I think for me, 7 just feels right because to me, he is always quarterback 2 or 3 behind Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes.
No, absolutely. I think to your point, we already kind of saw, look, Zach Taylor makes it work as best as he could, even when Joe Burrow went down. It's not like the Bengals were just, a punching bag where they had nothing going for them. My thing is, look, let me be crystal clear about this. If Joe Burrow's not the starter, though, this team moves down the power rankings a significant amount because they are getting older in some critical areas. I think you're going to have to really start addressing the D line going forward in the future. Miles Murphy last year didn't really produce at all. He's already falling down the depth chart a lot if you're looking at the Bengals depth chart. So you're in a situation where, right, especially if Trey Hendrickson gets traded, where I know that request is on the table as of right now, I think it hasn't really been getting talked about, but that's still potentially a thing where either traded or retiring. I don't know where the update is with that. If you lose Trey Hendrickson, I mean, all of a sudden, this D line is really lacking a lot of firepower. You have a midline cornerback room. I love Geno Stone's addition on this defense, but other than that, you have pretty midline safety and linebacking room, right? Like guys getting older at the positions across the board. Like the reality to me is kind of like if the Bengals don't make a move at the Super Bowl again soon, I do think that it's fair to say and safe to say that there will be kind of not a rebuild, but a competitive rebuild window where they're not going to be that same team that they have been for these last 3-4 years because these guys are getting older in a lot of important positions, and that is 100% the bottom line to me for the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing that is really tough for the Bengals, and it's something that comes with being a good team, is every year is kind of like AFC chip, Super Bowl, or not bust, but it's like, okay, well, what's the point of having one of the best receivers in the game, one of the best quarterbacks in the game, good run game, good defense, if we can't make it there? So that I think is just a lot of added pressure on the Bengals, and obviously injuries have kind of hindered them. But I think last year was kind of a wash. I think they are set to get back on track this year. Moving into number 9, we both have the New York Jets. Obviously, this hinges greatly on the fact if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy. I think if Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback on this team, they are probably in the 20s.
Oh yeah, they might even be late 20s as we saw from last year. Like, so I think because you'll agree with me on this very much. It's like people forget because of how bad it was when Aaron Rodgers left and the debacle that was Zach Wilson X. How am I blanking on? Help me out here. On the classic OC that we always rag on.
Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, Nathaniel Hackett. I think that was just such a debacle that it's like, okay, we're gonna wipe that slate clean. We're gonna remember that. Look, Nathaniel Hackett with Aaron Rodgers, I think, can actually be a very productive duo because really it just turns into Aaron Rodgers himself audibling anything he doesn't like, taking this offense over, right? You look at the roster the Jets have built. Again, when Aaron Rodgers is in there, there's no doubt this is a roster that can compete for the Super Bowl. This defense is stacked top to bottom with every starter basically the point they're at. The linebacking core is stacked. The D-line is stacked. The DB room is stacked. The O-line, right? You worry about the health. That's the thing is if this O-line can't stay healthy, they would drop down these power rankings a lot. But with a fully healthy O-line, I have to rank them as such as where if this line's fully healthy, this is what the team can be. But let me be clear, this is a team that's also very contingent upon health where they could drop a lot if a few guys are not healthy throughout a very big chunk of the season. But we're just ranking them as healthy right now. As we know, yes, they're old. There's a lot of question marks around the Jets. But as a fully healthy roster, they should be a very productive one if they can just stay healthy.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too is the upgrades on the O line and even in the receiving core, regardless of what you think of Mike Williams. And I'll go back to your point before I get into this. Health is the number one issue with this team. So Mike Williams injured. Their offensive line we know is injured often. Aaron Rodgers was injured last year. So if Mike Williams can stay healthy, Malachi Corley can be a decent addition for them as a wide receiver 3, even wide receiver 4, and Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses both stay healthy. And, if they miss a game here or there and Olu's got to hop in, like, they're good. Like, the defense has never really been the issue or concern with this team. But at the same time, like, if the offense can't produce, we're going to see a thing where, okay, well, Robert Saleh has not been able to get it done, and they have a very, very talented unit, and we know it's not necessarily been the defense, but his hiring Nathaniel Hackett, like, we know that outside of working with Aaron Rodgers, it's kind of like the Adam Gase with Peyton Manning thing. He's not really that good. So if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy and he can do his thing, the Jets are definitely an AFC championship contender, even a Super Bowl contender, but it all hinges on Aaron Rodgers and if he can stay healthy. And I know that's like a thing for every single team if their starting quarterback can stay healthy, but I'm not even talking about the team making the playoffs. I'm talking about the team even not collapsing.
No, like literally, the Jets are in a very unique situation where, yeah, to your point, they don't make the playoffs. There's just really no other way to look at it at this point. They are probably going to have a really clean slate, just sweep with the coaching staff, which is unfortunate when you see the defense playing this well. But again, the bottom line is when you're a coach and you make decisions, you're always going to be accountable for them. And all these hirings he has to be accountable for. It's going to be very interesting to monitor the Jets situation going forward here because there are so many contingencies, so many question marks on the table. Will be very interesting to monitor them.